You're now listening to the SportsPro podcast show.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the SportsPro podcast. My name is George Breare. I'm Head of Client Services here at SportsPro, and today I have the distinct pleasure of stepping into the hosting hot seat for a one-off opportunity to interview the co-CEO of the DFL, Steffen Merkel. Now, over our conversation, we cover a range of topics from their recent domestic and international media rights packages, everything from their use of AI and technology across the business, as well as sports innovation, their sports tech event that we're here at today and we've been covering over the past few days. It was a great conversation. I think Steffen shared some fascinating insights on the way the business is run and the direction it's going, and I hope you enjoy it just as much as I did. Enjoy. Welcome to the SportsPro podcast. It's great to have you on the show. We're sat here in this very snazzy podcast studio at SportsInnovation. How are you?
Thank you very much, George, and thanks for having me here on the SportsPro podcast. It's great to have you here at SportsInnovation. It's great that SportsPro is such a fantastic partner to the event as well. I'm very fine after the first day, which has been quite successful. Thanks a lot.
Good. It's been great to have a little look around the venue. We're speaking on the morning of day two. For those who may be new to Sports Innovation, are you happy just to give a quick overview of the event and sort of where it sits in the DFL ecosystem?
Of course. So we started Sports Innovation as a platform for the most creative minds in the sport technology industry in 2018, together with our partners from DLive, which is the event agency from the city of Düsseldorf. And since then, over the last 8 years, it has developed into one of the leading, I would say even the leading sports technology conference in Europe, I would even say worldwide. Because from the beginning, we've always been very clear. We wanted to create an event where we bring together all the partners, the innovative companies that are working in the surroundings of the DFL ecosystem and connect them all with each other in a very unique and personal way. So the idea from the beginning was always not just to create a usual event, but one where we have so-called innovation games here in the stadium in Düsseldorf, where Fortuna Düsseldorf is playing, and where always all of the partners that are here can connect, so to say, plug into the innovation game so that everybody can watch the innovation live as it happens and can see what truly works and what perhaps doesn't yet work, which is totally fine for an innovation event.
Yeah, that's definitely been one of the standouts for me walking around the event, is seeing these technologies in action, with real on-field games. I know something that's new for this event is expanding the sports that are being featured as part of the innovation games, moving just beyond football. I know we have some sessions this morning looking at basketball and other sports with some of the partners. How important is it to, when we're discussing innovation, to not just look at it from a set of slides on stage, but actually see those things in action, their good bits, but also maybe some of the areas that need improving also?
For us, this was always tremendously important because we've seen so many technologies also over the last 5 to 10 years at the DFL where we got promised this and this works and you just need to implement, for example, in the Bundesliga media product, but then saw in action it still needs some time for improvement, which is, as I said, for innovations totally okay. But therefore it was a very conscious decision on the one hand to feature everything that has to be shown live and on stage. And secondly, also to go just beyond football or soccer, because from the beginning, the idea was always that we do something from football for the wider sports industry, and therefore we are also proud that in the meantime, the event is well known and well respected also among many of the US major leagues, for example.
And looking at some of those major leagues and the DFL itself, of course, with live events like sport and the emotion that goes around that and the expectation from fans that go around live sports events, how do you manage something like innovation that requires testing, it requires making mistakes, often iterating, changing things against that backdrop of expectation and high standards from fans? Is it events like this where you're able to use the test bed for innovation? Are you able to do that within your live competitions through the year? So how does your organization approach innovation in that way?
Yeah. So we always approach innovation from a very practical perspective. We always want to set it in scene. So one of the key ideas behind it is exactly events like these, like Sports Innovation, where we can really test innovative features in practice. But also during the Bundesliga match days, we test a lot of the innovations, not in the actual live signal, because it's absolutely clear with the value that the Bundesliga signal and the product has for the fans. In the end, nothing can go wrong, but there are multiple opportunities to test opportunities, let's say, offline during a Bundesliga match day, which is for us always a prerequisite before we launch something new into the actual product. But we have to see it in live, in practice, to truly understand what the value add for the fans is.
Well, it's definitely been great to see those technologies come to life yesterday, and I'm sure will be today. And I encourage anyone listening to check out Sports Innovation. It's been a great event to be involved in as one of the strategic partners too, as SportsPro. Now, Stefan, looking outside of this event and the Bundesliga as a whole and the DFL's organisation as a whole, you've recently extended your position as co-CEO after 2 years in the role to date. What have been your reflections on those 2 years, and also looking forward to this fresh new period?
It has been an amazing 2 years, quite, I must confess, also an intense 2 years with, of course, 2 years ago, an investor process that we have been launching but not carrying over the finish line, with a domestic media rights tender that took a bit longer than expected. But overall, I draw a very positive conclusion over the first 2 years, which was also one of the reasons why the presidential board and I decided that we prolong the contract until the end of 2029. Right now, I'm drawing a very positive conclusion, because on the one hand, I would say that the DFL, that the Bundesliga as a wider whole, is well equipped for the future. Also, after we've recently released the new numbers for the Bundesliga, the new economic numbers, but also as I see that especially the domestic media market, after the last domestic tender that we finished, is in quite a good shape and well equipped also for future success.
I'm keen to dive into some of those economic numbers and the media rights in a sec, but before that, one of the notable aspects of your term so far has been the restructure that's taken place in the DFL, some of the strategic repositioning as well. I was wondering if you could just talk us through what that looks like, some of the centralization that's taken place, and some of the thinking behind it as to why you went down that route.
That's exactly true, George. At the end of last year, we've decided to found a new company within the DFL group, the DFL structure, which will be called Bundesliga Media, and which will be an entity where we centralize all commercial functions that are sitting within the DFL group. So especially domestic media rights, international media rights, sponsoring and licensing partnerships, the marketing department, and all digital platforms. And this is an idea that originally emerged during the investor process that we had 2.5 years ago, where we already wanted to centralize some of those functions, which, as it sometimes is with an organization that has historically grown, were scattered around in the DFL group a bit, to be honest. So what we will do within the next week is found this new company, which is essentially a merger of the two Bundesliga subsidiaries, Bundesliga International and DFL Digital Sports, together with the domestic media business, because we believe that all of those fields cannot be really separated anymore. This is also a guiding theme here for sports innovation, but can also be seen in day-to-day business at the DFL. The domestic and the international media rights business are so closely interconnected nowadays, which you also see in the partner structures with partners such as DAZN, who are a valued national and domestic partners, but are also our partner in an international space. Often we talk to the same people, and therefore we said, to have truly a marketing effort that comes out of one hand, we need to found this new company.
And so a core part of that is, I guess, sharing that expertise, sharing that experience and the knowledge internally to sit both across domestic and international. And do you see that close interlinking of those two businesses as crucial for your long-term growth and long-term success?
Yes, we see this as absolutely crucial. Another example, I think, which is very illustrative, is the close interlinkage between international media rights sales, but also digital platforms. Because, of course, on an operational level, the teams within the DFL group have always been in very close contact, have been constantly aligning on the overall strategy. But what we have seen over the last years is that more and more we came to points where we had to take a decision. Do we sell international media rights in a traditional way, or do we launch an own digital platform in a certain international target market? And having those businesses sit within two different entities is a very different thing to manage. So therefore, combining this in one entity, having all the decisions, so to say, in one desk and one supervisory board, we believe makes us much more agile and fast in the future.
Keen to dive into that, because I think the DFL's approach to international media rights is a really interesting and a very innovative one. Speaking from a more UK mindset, I know that the Bundesliga rights, for instance, sit across quite a varied set of organizations. You have some of the major broadcasters in there, but you're also experimenting with influencer-focused and creator-led broadcasts with YouTube creators as an example. You've just talked there about, experimenting with maybe going D2C in some international markets, and we've seen the Premier League launching their own D2C service in Singapore this week as an example. So part of a wider trend. Do you see international broadcast markets as an opportunity to innovate and test different functions and test different opportunities in comparison to the more traditional commercial structure of a domestic rights?
Yeah, very good question, George. And from me, a clear yes as an answer. It is definitely also for us an innovative test bed, although, of course, the ultimate goal also for us is very clear. We have to maximize revenues in international markets. But what we've seen over the last years in some markets, and we have to acknowledge and respect this as clear as part of a clear strategic focus, is that we are rather in a challenger position in many of the markets. This is not only a problem for us, I would say it's also something where we can really create value from, because perhaps for us, just from a pure financial standpoint right now, not so much is at stake compared to other of, for example, the US major leagues or the Premier Leagues internationally. So as you were just alluding to the example of the UK market, it was a very conscious decision to take a new step there. As we've done also some years ago already in Brazil, where we saw that, for example, selling media rights in a very traditional way, in an exclusive way, was not anymore an option for us. And where we said we want to reach new target groups, we want to maximize the reach, want to maximize the exposure of the Bundesliga. And what we've seen, for example, in Brazil, now that we are 3 to 4 years in the market with the strategy, is that we are the fastest growing international football league in Brazil, have sometimes 2 to 3 million spectators each and every weekend, that the number of Bundesliga fans has doubled over the last 10 years, and that also the first commercial successes are showing, since we've more than doubled the revenues within the last 3 to 4 years alone. So it is not a blueprint for each and every market. It's always a market-specific decision, but it can be a blueprint for some of the international markets in the future.
It's almost a cliche now that necessity breeds invention, right? That there's an opportunity, right, in a competitive landscape, and where the media rights world is maybe on less strong foundations than it's been in the past. Do you see that as a great opportunity to say, this is our chance to have a bit of a free swing, a bit of a free hit, and try these different things and really lean into alternative ways of growing the game internationally?
Yes, I definitely see it as a chance. Of course, it is also for us a challenge, because the business might have been a bit easier internationally 10 years ago when you were just selling exclusive media rights, perhaps even on a pan-regional basis with not so many partners. We are beyond that point. So yes, I would say it's also a chance for us that we are actively seizing, where we are actively taking a chance, want to try out new things and see what works for us as a league in the end, and what doesn't.
Well, that was part one of my interview with Steffen Merkel. Lots to get our teeth into already, and plenty more still to come. But before then, we're going to take a very quick break.
What's happening now and next in sports tech? As AI adoption accelerates rapidly, the inaugural Global Sports Tech Report from SportsPro and Sportradar reveals which technologies and trends are driving real business impact across 6 core areas of sport. Informed by a global survey of senior executives and insights from leading tech and sport organizations, the report offers a 360-degree view of what's working today and where the industry is headed tomorrow.
You're now listening to the SportsPro podcast show.
Maybe moving a bit closer to home. So looking at some of the financial numbers that you mentioned earlier, I know that the DFL for 2024-25 reported some record revenue, around 6.5 billion euros, give or take 5 billion of that coming from the Bundesliga 1 or the top tier. Keen to get your sense on the financial health of football in Germany, sort of where you see the financial health of the Bundesliga today, but also how well it's set up to maintain that growth and continue in, again, what is quite a challenging economic market within football right now in Europe.
So indeed, the numbers that we've been presenting in January have been extremely strong. It has been record revenues, as you mentioned, for Bundesliga, for the top tier, with more than 5 billion euros. Also equally, by the way, for Bundesliga 2, which generated more than 1.2 billion euros, which is, fun fact, more than the top tier generated when the DFL was founded 25 years ago. So
Wow.
This shows also in the very long term that the creation back then of a league-wide entity benefited both leagues equally, I would say. So the economic foundation on which the clubs and the league organization today stand are really, really strong, I must say. And the most and the best thing for me is, because we're asking a bit, where does the growth come from, how we equipped for future success, is that we still have a very balanced structure, also a very balanced revenue structure. Because if you dive a bit deeper, you see that the growth is actually coming from many sources. So media rights revenues, especially the domestic ones, have developed in a very positive way. Many clubs were very successful on the sponsoring side, moving beyond the pure domestic sponsoring business, exploring virtual advertising in international markets. The merchandising business has developed really well, and also matchday revenue, which is for us at the Bundesliga and Bundesliga 2, with more than 21 million spectators in this 24-25 season, a very important economic factor still. And this is what makes me, I would say, most confident and hopeful for the future, that we don't just rely on a very single source of revenues, but that growth has been so distributed among the different clubs, but also the different streams of revenue.
Not just the diversification of the revenues that's interesting from my perspective, but also coming again from the UK, where profitability is not a word you hear very often in relation to football. How important is that as a financial metric for the clubs within the DFL, that it's not just about growing the top line revenues, but actually having that sustainable financial business model, having that profitability that allows them to continue to thrive in the future?
Yeah, it has always been a very important thing for us in the Bundesliga to feature very high economic stability over the last 20 to 30 years already, and it continues to do so. Of course, it has to do with our very unique club structure, I would say, with the 50+1 rule that is well known in European professional football, but which doesn't allow us to compensate any deficits, for example, that are occurring with any investor contributions, or at least makes this much harder. So being
Could you
profitable,
just very quickly give an overview of the 50+1 model for those
of course,
who might not be aware?
50+1 means in effect that in the end, all of the clubs, except for right now 2 exceptions, cannot be owned by majority investors, but always have to be owned by the club, by the association that is sitting behind it. For example, in case of Bayern Munich, an association with 400,000 members, or in Dortmund, 250,000 members, which of course means on the investor side that it is not for us so easy to, or for the clubs, not so easy to take on additional capital.
And how does that compare when it comes to competitiveness across Europe? So, of course, we don't have the 50+1 rule in the UK or in many other European leagues. We're seeing huge swathes of investment going into those leagues right now and into the teams. The multi-club ownership model is a big disruption in European football too. How do you see that balance impacting the competitiveness for German football across Europe? Do you see that as a factor?
I see us still in a very strong economic and competitive position, because if you just look at the bare revenue numbers, which is in the end always, I would say, a good proxy for financial competitiveness, also on the transfer market, we are still the number 2. Of course, the Premier League over the last 20 to 30 years has done a fantastic job there as the clear number 1. But Bundesliga as a top tier in German professional football is still the clear number 2 in European football, despite the fact that we're just having 18 teams. So the competitiveness on the transfer market, in the international markets, in the international competitions is absolutely there, which you also see by the fact that right now in this very season, we are still competing for the number 2 spot in the UEFA 5-year ranking.
And looking at some of those, that competitiveness in the transfer market, I'm an Arsenal fan, so was delighted when Harry Kane made the switch from Tottenham to Bayern Munich from a selfish point of view. But we are seeing an increase in the number of English players moving from the Premier League into the Bundesliga and enjoying, significant success when they do so. What impact does that have on the Bundesliga as a competition, particularly, when it comes to growing in the UK market? How important is player transfers and having some of those personalities, some of those figures from different countries for growing the league outside of your home market?
Yeah, it's one of the absolute key factors in growing interest for the Bundesliga, as with any other sports leagues internationally. So, of course, Harry Kane signing at Bayern Munich has been a tremendously important factor for us in the growth that we've experienced in the UK over the last 2 to 3 years, and where compared to the situation 4 to 5 years ago, we've increased our reach numbers by a factor of 3 or 4, which is, of course, a tremendous achievement in such a short amount of time. We see that this is one of the most important factors, because when we look at internationalization, we always say it's basically 4 factors that are decisive. The first one is, are the clubs successful in international competitions on a UEFA level? Do they have locally relevant heroes in the league, which is the case, for example, with UK and Harry Kane? As we mentioned, do they have strong club brands as well? And are the sporting competitions, the sporting decisions close and interesting or not? Those are the 4 relevant factors. And therefore, of course, local heroes, local stars play a big role in the strategy of the Bundesliga.
And I'm keen to revisit our conversation around some of the domestic rights, the broadcast rights, after we've spoken a bit about the international stuff. So the recent domestic media rights process closed. Seen an uplift from the previous deal. I think it's around 1.2 billion euros per season.
Yeah, 1.1.
1.1 billion euros per season. Thank you. And that comes against a context where not many other leagues have been able to achieve this. We've seen very significant challenges in other European leagues. The Premier League itself, which is often seen as the harbinger of strong media rights sales, have plateaued in many cases, or have needed to expand the package of their broadcast contract. So what's your review of that process, the fee you've managed to attract, the package that you've been able to bring in? How comfortable are you with that current deal, and how does that sit against the backdrop of other leagues for you?
So we are extremely happy with the outcome of the domestic media rights tender that we concluded in the end of 2024, and are right now, if I look at the German market, also very confident for the future of the market. So of course, the financial result that you just mentioned was a really, in international comparison, an extraordinary one. It was a rather small increase, but against the backdrop of a market development that was not super easy during the last years, it was for us financially a success that gives the clubs planning security until the end of the current decade, actually, because the contracts run until 2029. We were also super happy to keep both big domestic live partners, being Sky Deutschland and being DAZN, on board, both acquiring major live packages once again, which means, of course, also when I look ahead at the next auction, both have to defend the market position, will certainly be interested in acquiring again Bundesliga rights. And of course, we have been with the Champions League auction at the end of last year, seeing new interest, new players entering the market. Paramount Plus that has acquired one of the biggest packages, for example. What this means for the 2028 auction, which is yet a bit more than 2 years ahead, is a bit difficult to predict, of course. But in general, I would say the state of the German market, where both of the Bundesliga partners, Sky and DAZN, are operating on a profitable basis right now, which means the model worked for both partners, not only for the DFL, is a really good one, and is one that makes me really confident for the next years to come.
And the current experimentation with D2C, or your investment in D2C as well, and some of the other areas we talked about earlier, do you see that as a way of safeguarding in some of those negotiations in the years to come, that you're able to have different options on the table, you're able to really understand how that media market is evolving and developing in that time?
I would say it gives us optionality. So to be very clear, in the domestic markets, selling rights in a tender process to domestic media rights partners is an absolute cornerstone of the DFL business model, and will also continue to do so in 28 and absolutely beyond. Because what people sometimes overlook a bit is that, especially in the domestic market, we are also in a regulated business. Because in our case, there's the Bundeskartellamt as a domestic regulator for antitrust and anti-competition matters, is overseeing our process, and we are not in a position where we can just do what we want. Because technically, and that's sometimes overlooked in the domestic market, launching an own service would mean that we don't take the rights to the market, so don't provide it to partners, to broadcasters who build their entire business model on this one, which is not super easy for a market-dominant organization, which is how we are viewed by the Bundeskartellamt. So I would say some of those ideas that you alluded to, they give us some optionality for the future, might also be a fallback scenario for the future, which is, by the way, not entirely a new thing. We always had those chances, those ideas also in the past, but let's say it gives us optionality for the future, which is, by the way, also why we, for example, purchased a stake in Dyn Media, the German streamer for handball, basketball, last year.
I want to take the conversation now more towards the technology side of things. Very apt, as we're sat at SportsInnovation. One of the key topics yesterday, and you spoke about it in your opening address, was AI. How are you looking at AI internally? Are you seeing it as an opportunity? Are you seeing it as a risk as well? Sort of where have you identified as the highest value areas that you're looking to work with AI on?
Yeah. So for me, the glass, when it comes to AI, is always half full, not half empty. For us, it is absolutely an opportunity, and an opportunity in many fields across the football industry, be it at game-related matters such as scouting, injury prevention, training, steering, but also, of course, in the media product with a personalization and localization of the product that becomes possible with the help of AI. So it's absolutely an opportunity for us. What we have, however, also seen, especially already after the last Sports Innovation 2024, where the topic really popped up at full speed for the first time, is that we don't see it as a risk, but that we have to give ourselves clear guardrails and guidelines on how we want to deploy the technology. So the DFL group, after Sports Innovation 2024, gave itself an internal code of conduct, as I would say, how we want to implement AI and where the boundaries are. And for us, one thing is always important. For the Bundesliga as a very authentic sports league, what we are showing in terms of media content, for example, and media product has to be authentic, because obviously there are many possibilities to manipulate content also with the help of AI. That is something that is for us always a no-go as a league, where people are come to the stadium to experience a fantastic atmosphere, follow real idols, have real heroes that they are following. This is for us the guideline that we will not be surpassing. But otherwise, it's certainly an opportunity to scale, especially the media product.
Interesting your code of conduct, because we work in the events business. Having attended many events over the past 12 months, it feels as if each time we do, the AI conversation has just moved on so much from the previous iteration. New technologies coming up all the time. The applications are so varied now, and also the unintended consequences of using AI come up all the time too, where what you think is a positive use case has many risks associated with it and has potentially many downsides. How often do you need to revisit that code of conduct and keep updating it as the market evolves and the technology changes so much?
To be honest, we haven't updated this code of conduct formally, but what we always do when it comes to specific concrete examples that we, for example, want to publish in terms of media content, we are revisiting where we are standing against this code of conduct. I give you one specific example. We had, I think it was 2 years ago, we had an example of a clip that we were posting on the Bundesliga's international social media sites, where we had a player that was piling 3 footballs on top of each other and then was shooting the top football into the goal. It was the most clicked video of that year on the Bundesliga social media channel, but people were asking, is this real or is this a bit manipulated? And we saw, yes, there was a bit of technological help behind it. And this was for us a clear moment where we saw we have to be either very clear on when we use this, and sometimes you play with technology. It's fine, but then we have to show it clearly to people. But otherwise, we can't do it, because there should never be any question of what if people see Bundesliga content, if it's true and authentic or not. So we keep constantly revisiting this code of conduct when we see very specific application cases in the Bundesliga.
And applying technology to maybe some of the other areas of the sports business ecosystem, you talked about the growth of revenues across sponsorship, in venue as well, in the international markets, digital advertising working really well too. Are you working with the clubs more directly to share best practices, share areas of innovation where you're seeing commercial success? And that idea that, the greater the size of the pie, then the bigger the slice for everyone. How do you share those sort of innovations with the member clubs?
Yeah, so absolutely. For us, it is always in the end about increasing the share of the pie for everyone. A very good example is virtual advertising that you've just been mentioning. It was a project that I had started in the DFL like 8 or 9 years ago. And in the very beginning, we were asking ourselves, of course, the question, whose right is it? Is it a league right? Is it a club right? And we said from the very beginning, in this very ecosystem, we are a technological provider. It's a club right. It's about the LED boards. So it is not about for the DFL making the next 50 or 60 million euros of revenue, which we then distribute anyways to the clubs. We are, in this respect, a service provider. We were getting the clubs together, showing them the possibilities from a technological side, showing them on how we can implement it for them, but them also giving them some advice on how they can use this commercially. And I think this is a very good example of how the DFL, of how the Bundesliga ecosystem works. In the end, it is about increasing the share of the pie for everybody at the league and not just the league organization. That's not the way how I or my predecessors were managing the league.
Thank you. Of everything you've seen at Sports Innovation so far, what excites you most for the future?
Oh, that's a difficult one, because I've seen so many great use cases. If I might point out one directly, I've seen yesterday a use case from our partner from Electronic Arts, who were showcasing and filming the game that was happening on the pitch, and within just a matter of seconds were able to replicate exactly the game in their gaming engine. And that was something which I consider fascinating, because 2 or 3 years ago, I wouldn't have believed that this is possible.
Yeah, I think if you were to take a walk along the Sports Innovation floor, there's a few things that are quite mind-blowing.
Yes.
Watching robotics football yesterday was definitely something I didn't think I'd be seeing this week. And lastly, looking at the DFL, what are you most excited about in your next 2 years as co-CEO? What are you most excited about to be working on? Where do you see what sort of gets you up in the morning and, really excites you to do that job?
To be honest, I'm excited every morning doing this job because for me, it's still, after working 11 years for the company and the organization, it's a big privilege in shaping the future of the organization, of the league on a day-to-day basis. For me personally, in my job that I'm doing, shaping especially the future of the marketing of the league domestically, but also internationally, is something that excites me every morning because I believe that there is still so much potential, especially in the international market space for us as a league that has a very unique culture that stands out in the way of how it's managed, of how the clubs are owned, with the 50+1 rule, with the fantastic stadium atmosphere. Bringing this to life, bringing this to the people also beyond Germany is something that really excites me.
It's been fascinating listening to you talk about it. I think the DFL has a very interesting model. Its approach to media rights and other areas that we've talked about today is very innovative and very interesting. And thank you very much for taking the time to talk us through it, Steffen. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much, George. It was a pleasure.
And so concludes my conversation with Steffen. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Always interesting to hear a deep dive into the way that some of the top European leagues are run. But don't worry, that's just one of a number of things that we're covering at SportsPro. So do head over to sportspromedia.com where you can check out all the latest news and features from across the business side of sport. Until then, it's a big thank you from me. We hope you enjoyed the show. Well, if you have an even bigger appetite for some audio goodness, there's plenty of other podcasts that you can get your teeth into from SportsPro. We have our motorsport-focused podcast, Mike's Out, or our digital media-focused podcast, StreamTime Sports. So do head over to your favorite podcast channels, check those out. And if you have any questions, just ping them over to editor@sportspromedia.com. And until then, it's a very big thank you from me, and we'll see you soon.